Without you guys, as we always say, there'd be no group. It would just be Marion and myself sitting in a room talking to ourselves. So it's a lot more fun this way. Groups like this are really necessary, I think you all know, to keep our industry strong, to keep our skills sharp, to keep everybody up to date on the latest things that are happening. We like you all to come keep attending to keep your skills sharp. We appreciate you guys coming out to this group in particular. So for those of you that have been here before, you know we have a few rules. First rule, don't be a dick, right? It's a very simple rule, strictly enforced. You know, people are up here trying to share their ideas. Some people are up here for the first time. You know, we want to foster that. We want to encourage that. So don't be a dick. Second, don't take yourself so seriously. You know, while we try to make sure everyone has a safe environment here, we're also not enforcing any rules too harshly. We're not, you know, bringing the hammer down on people when it's not necessary. This is a casual setting. We want to keep it that way. And third rule is, if tonight is your first night at CleveSec, you will have to speak. Hands up if it's your first time here. Couple? Yeah? So what we do for the first timers is we just have you come up and say your name so everyone knows who you are, and then you'll have to answer this question. Tonight's question is Star Trek or Star Wars, and you are more than welcome to justify your answer. So before we get into that, just a little housekeeping. So where we live online, at CleveSec is our Twitter handle. That's where we're most active. If you're a security professional and you're not on Twitter, you really should be. The whole industry, for whatever reason, has flocked to Twitter as its social media outlet of choice, and we embrace that. If you mention us at CleveSec with job postings or project ideas or something you need help with, we're great about retweeting it, or same with hashtag CleveSec, where we try to retweet it, get it out there, get you some help if you need it, or connect you with some people that might be interested in what you're interested in. Then we have the meetup. The meetup is where all of our long form information is. That's where the meeting invites are. You can RSVP there. Excuse me, that's where the talk information is, so make sure you keep an eye on that for changes. We have an obligatory LinkedIn group. I don't think there's any activity on it. I don't think anybody uses it at all, but if you want a little badge on your LinkedIn profile, go ahead and add that. We have the Gmail account, which is just for more private correspondence. If you have a talk idea, go ahead and send it here. If you have a question that maybe you don't want out on Twitter, or you have something that you don't feel comfortable putting out there like that, go ahead and send us an email at clevesec@gmail.com. We're pretty good about getting back to you. And if you can't make a meeting, we encourage you to make meetings because, as what happened with our last meeting, technical difficulties happen. Maybe audio doesn't make it into the video. You know, you don't get the great discussion afterwards. But if for whatever reason you can't make a meeting, all of our meetings are recorded and put up on youtube.com/CleveSec. Just a reminder that this is a community effort. You know, we need you guys to come up here and speak. We need you guys to, we love that you come out here to learn, but we all know that you know something that not everyone else in the room knows. So we'd love to have you up here, share your knowledge with everybody. Talks can be 5 minutes or they can be an hour. We can work out workshops if that's what you want to do. You know, we can accommodate all kinds of styles. Second Tuesday of every month is this. This is the CleveSec meeting night. The last Tuesday of every month is the community night, where we usually go to a bar, play some games, or just talk and, you know, get to know each other a little better. Tonight's agenda. First we have Phishing Like a Monarch with Kingfisher with Spencer McIntyre. And then we will have the Cuyahoga County Cyber Support Initiative with Jeremy Meal. So, first timers, come on up. If you raised your hand earlier, come on up. Just tell us your name and Star Trek or Star Wars, and feel free to justify.
Pat Gannon with KeyBank Security Operations Center, Star Trek, and Deanna Troy.
So, I'm Jake Garley. I work here at SecureState. Been here about 4.5 years now, and I guess I'd have to go with Star Wars just because I watched it first. Rick Leonard and Boyne.
And I'm Taras Kashuba. I work with Pat, KeyBank, and Star Wars.
My name is SPF McIntyre. I also work here. I've been here for about 4.5 years as well, and definitely Star Wars.
All right, that's all of our starting stuff, so we're going to give Spencer a few minutes here to get set up, and we'll get started on his talk.
Coming out, like I said, my name is Spencer McIntyre, and here to talk to you about Kingfisher. So just a little bit about what we're going to try to hit up tonight. So it's what we're going to cover over the next hour. Quick introduction overview. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. We'll talk about what Kingfisher is, how to get started on using it, what the campaigns are. We'll also talk a little bit about how we use it internally, what it allows us to do for our clients, and things like that. We give some quick tips on how to run a phishing campaign with Kingfisher. So we're going to talk on some of the variables and how those are used to provide dynamic content to our victims, that people that we are trying to phish. And then lastly, we're going to end it up with a demo, because demos are the best, and that's probably what everyone wants to see the most, is like, let's actually see the tools. So that's always the best part. So we're going to have a good sized demo at the very end. So as long as we can wade through the slides here, we'll get to that. And then finally, we're going to quickly talk about analyzing the results of the phishing campaign, because while we all like to send messages all day long, we want people to click our links, at the end of the day, we need to be able to analyze the information that we've gathered. We need to be able to pick what parts of that information is useful, so we can tell our clients, like, hey, these are things you need to look at, and how we actually interpret that information. So we're going to talk about that. So a quick little bit about me. I specifically work at the Research and Innovation team here at SecureState. I am the research lead. The author of Kingfisher. I wrote all the code for Kingfisher, although I've had a lot of help from guys on the team, feedback, things like that, with templates, feature requests, stuff like that. Pretty big open source contributor. I'm a big fan of open source. I am a member of this little project called Metasploit. I don't know if any of you have heard about it, but I am one of the Metasploit committers, so that's pretty cool. Big Python enthusiast. I like Python a lot, and I have a couple of certs after my name, but nobody really cares about those. So why are we here? Why do we care about phishing and social engineering? Well, bottom line, or what we tell the executives, is that from this Verizon data breach report that they all like to talk about, social engineering is on the rise. So it is a viable vector for how attackers are breaking into organizations. So we see that coming through. So this is like the trend in the industry. And so of course here at SecureState, we want to mimic what the real world attackers are going to do. That's our service, that's what we provide. So we want to make sure that we're keeping up with that. So that's why we do phishing internally, because that's what they're doing in the real world. But this is also driving organizations' need for increasing user awareness, because that's what phishing is all about. And when we do it, we're not trying to just break into computers for the walls. We are trying to increase user awareness so that when they click a link, they understand that they made a mistake and that they did something bad, and hopefully it doesn't happen again, because the next time it might not be me that's phishing them, or it might not be Jake, it might be an actual attacker, and we don't want that. So we're trying to increase awareness. This is sort of why we are trying to do this. So, in order to do that, we use Kingfisher. A long time ago, there was a project called the Spear Phishing Toolkit. Have any of you heard of the Spear Phishing Toolkit? That was already in PHP, and I believe it was about 2 years ago that the project, they just threw their hands up and they said, we're out, we can't support this anymore, this is the final version, the bugs aren't going to be fixed, that's it. And so at that point, we had been using it up to that point, and it lacked a couple of features that we really wanted, and nobody really knows PHP on our team, so we don't really want to use it. So that's why we developed Kingfisher, and we released it back as open source to the community. So we wanted to make sure we had all the features that we needed internally, and of course, because we develop it, I'm able to add in these features to make sure we have what we need to do our assessments. So it is a full Python client and server. Like I said, I'm a huge Python enthusiast, so it's all written in Python, the client and the server, as you will see. It's a thick client, so there is no web user interface, which as far as I can tell, out of all the phishing tools I've ever seen, all of them are web-based. Whether it's software as a service or it's something like Phishing Frenzy or it's a Rails interface, they all have this web UI that you can click through, which to me, from a pen tester's perspective, I like web UIs. That's a huge attack vector. That's what we look at. So we try to stay away from having the web UI, so we use a thick client, and you'll get to see plenty of that in the demo. It's also open source, so people can use it as often as they want. You can run a campaign of 5 emails, you can run a campaign of 37,000 emails, and you can do it as many times as you want. So it's all right there. It's in active development. I pushed up a few commits today. I fixed a few bugs, added some documentation, so it's in pretty active development, and is hosted on GitHub, along with SecureState's other open source projects. So we have a few things hosted on GitHub, so you can check those out at github.com/SecureState. So this is one of those projects you can get from there. So it's a good background of what it is. So the server runs well on Linux. Big Linux fans. So when it runs on Linux, we support Debian, Ubuntu, CentOS, so you can install it on there. There's an automated installation script that will handle installing and setting everything up for you, which is very nice. There is no web server required. You don't need to install, configure, Apache, or Nginx, or anything like that, because we're pen testers. Oftentimes we want to get it done quickly, and because it's all written in Python, the web server itself as well is written in Python, so we just throw that up there as well. So there's not really any need to do any configuration outside HTTP server. Finally, the client, that also works very well on Linux, but I've been releasing Windows executables with every release cycle. So you can find the latest Windows build is up on GitHub, so you can just double click that and the client will be installed. If you have a server running, you can connect and get started with it, so that's pretty cool. There's a lot of documentation up on the project wiki, so if you want to get started with this and hopefully you think it's cool and you want to take a look at it, there's a lot of documentation up on there, so you can go through how to do a lot of features of what we're talking about. Should walk you through on how to get started. So that's all the user documentation is all up on the wiki. Alright, so when you're running a campaign, these are the 3 basic types of campaigns that we like to see. Because they all start with that initial point of we send an email to someone we don't know. We're sending them an email. And where the different types of campaigns really start to differentiate is what happens after that user clicks a link. So essentially, what content are we serving to that user that they should not have seen because they shouldn't have clicked the link? So what are we doing for that? We can just simply provide user awareness. We can show them a page and say, what you did is naughty. Don't do that again. Slap them on the wrist and send them on their way. We can ensure that they have accepted this training, because a lot of times we have clients that have a social engineering program and they want to make sure that the people that have failed have accepted the training. They acknowledge that what they did was bad. So we can keep track of that. If we're not going for user awareness, we want to do a little bit more offensive. We can also do credential harvesting. We can direct them to a page that when they click the link, looks just like their intranet login and says, hey, you need to sign in so that you can download the latest update or update your HR information or something like that. And when they submit their credentials, we can, of course, harvest those credentials and we can do metrics on those and keep track of that. And finally, the last thing, which is probably going to be the most fun, is we can, of course, do drive-by attacks. We can serve up some kind of a malicious payload. We can try the latest IE exploit if we're so inclined to do so, or we can serve up a Java applet, things like that. I would have to say, from experience, what we do the most often is probably credential harvesting. A lot of times we do credential harvesting, but we can also mix and match any of these attacks. We can do credential harvesting, and after the user submits their credentials, we can send them to a user awareness page that says, you also submitted credentials. What you did is really, really bad. So we can do that, and so Kingfisher allows us the flexibility to really be able to model our content to what our clients need and want to fit their specific needs. Yeah, like I said, mix and match, create your own. Alright, so user awareness. Like I said, it all starts when the user clicks that link in the email. That is where the fun begins, because that is, of course, to us, a success. So we can serve up static website content. Of course, this would be like the user awareness training that says, you know, what you did was bad. Educate them on it. This is a little sample of what we have, and you have to click the agree. And for compliance purposes, we can make sure that the people that click the link agree that they read through the content, presumably, and agreed that what they did was wrong. They won't do it again. This is an example of credential harvesting. Real quick, we just have a basic login page, so nothing too fancy. The way that it actually works on the back end is that any form that submits a username and password parameter, the server is going to log that information. So it doesn't care what the HTML form is, it doesn't care what the page is, as long as those parameters are passed to the server as a GET or POST request and has that username and password in there, it's going to log that as credentials. So that gives us great flexibility. We can create any page, it's called anything. We don't have to shut the server down, it allows us to make changes on the fly. And as long as those parameters go through, we're able to track those. And after the user has clicked the first time, we set a cookie, so we're able to track that through. So really, after they visited that first page and they're looking at the login page and they submit their credentials, there's no like UID that has to be passed again. It's pretty easy for the template designer. All they really have to do is just make the login page, and that login page has to pass the username and password. Pretty reasonable. And it's going to collect all those. It's going to correlate them back to the user of whoever submitted those. Lastly, drive-by attacks. So we have a couple of options here. Of course, being big into Metasploit, I like Metasploit a lot. So we can redirect users to whatever exploit server we would like. If we have a server running like a browser exploit, something like that, we can do that. Another thing that we do quite often, because it's not usually as easy as just redirecting users, because we often don't know what user or what browser they're using, so we want to be able to target them. So we don't usually do that very often, but what we do sometimes is we use a tool called Beef. And so we'll inject Beef hook into all of our pages, and Kingfisher, of course, aids in that process and makes that very easy. So we'll have them all hooked up into our Beef server, and then we can attack them based on that. And if we see that, oh, hey, this user right here is using IE7, that's pretty old, and they're on XP, we can then redirect them using the Beef framework. It's a very fantastic tool to browser exploit in Metasploit. So we can sort of cherry pick and have a higher success rate and not, crash browsers and just launch exploits at systems that we don't really know. So we can do that, which is very nice. And like I said, we can mix and match, which is very, very nice. One of our more effective pretexts is we will send out an email saying, hey, there's a new version of your antivirus software out. Please log in and update your antivirus. So we will send them first to a login page, which they will then give us their domain credentials, because who wasn't want to do that? And then after that, they are served a friendly executable that is their new antivirus update. So that works out very well. So we have that. Oh, and before we give them the AV update, we have like a progress bar that says it's scanning your system and then determines that you have a problem and you download the executable. So we have pretty high success rate at that, which is pretty cool. So just sort of example of like one of the ways that we like chain these sort of attack vectors together to get the most bang for our buck when we actually see the users coming in. All right, so the way that we power all of this is we use dynamic content. We're able to personalize our content to our users. So we use a templating system called Jinjo, which is a templating language that allows us to essentially write our HTML, and then in the different fields that we want to be customized to each individual user, we use these variables. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is a list of some of the variables that we use most frequently. But in our emails, we use a first and last name. So I can send an email saying, hey, dear Johnny, you need to update your HR profile. And one of the things that we also like to do is manipulate the dates. We can say this is due tomorrow, and it'll have tomorrow's date on it. They don't see it that day or they see it tomorrow. It usually pressures them and tries to get them to click it a little bit earlier. So we're able to make templates, and we're able to use these repeatedly because we don't have to then go back in, update dates, update names, things like that. Because of course, when we're doing a campaign with a couple thousand emails, we're not going to be able to go in and like customize each individual one. So we use these templates, and so we're able to put in these variables that are set through the client. The most important one we have right here is the phishing link. This is going to be the URL of what we're actually trying to get the users to click on. So we're able to get them to click on that. So that's the most important one to be in your emails if you want to get started with it. One of the other cool features is we have a tracking.image tag. What this does is this inserts a link to a single 1 pixel by 1 pixel empty GIF. And the reason why we do that is we put that into our emails that we send to users so that when they view the email, when someone opens the email, a lot of clients will try to load images, and we can check to see if that image has been loaded with the client's unique identifier. So we can say, hey, we know this user viewed our email, and then we can go in and do some more advanced things like, did they click on the link? And sometimes we'll see that they opened the email, but they didn't click the link, which tells us that they probably saw and thought that it was a little bit too sketchy for them. So we can check things like that. So the tracking.image is pretty nice. Back in the winter of 2013, right around December of 2013, I believe it was, Google came out and said, hey, spammers are starting to use this technique. So they actually protect their users by a Google server will actually request the tracking image. So while you can sometimes tell if, you actually cannot tell if the email has been opened, but when the image is requested, it's actually requested by a Google server. So you can't actually tell that, which is a pretty interesting feature that they added into Gmail. So this was that exact technique that they were talking about, serving up an image so that when the email is opened, they can track and did that. A lot of these variables are also available to our web pages because, like I said, the users are coming into us with a unique identifier. We know what email was sent to which user that was coming in. So if, say, Jake clicks on my link and views my web page, he has a unique identifier that the server is going to know, I know this email was sent to Jake, and I can serve up a web page that says, hey, Jake, you need to update your HR information, which makes it that much more customized to the users, and the users feel much better and they're much more safe about it, which is much more legitimate from their perspective, because the server knows who they are. It's not just, hey user, you need to update your information. So sort of adds that extra layer of legitimacy to it. So why use variables? Like I said, we use a lot of dynamic content. We can do additional things. Like we can even put in some logic into our pages. We can do more advanced things, like on our HTML page. We can say, has this user visited more than one time? And we can redirect them to, say, a different page if they've done that. We can do things like check to say, has this user already submitted credentials? And if they have, we don't have to show them the login page again. So we can sort of prevent them from coming back and sort of snooping in on us. We can do advanced things like changing up the names and things like that. It allows a great deal of flexibility for us while we're building our campaign pretexts. It's very adaptive, and basically what we've done is we've templatized out a lot of our basic attacks. So we have these templates and we can load them up and hit the ground running very quickly because these are already done. So this is an example right here of some logic that we have. That line number 4, I don't have a laser pointer, I wish I did. This line number right here is basically saying if the client is trained, so they have accepted the training, instead of printing the page, we're actually just going to, they'll still print the page, but we're going to redirect them to the trained HTML. So if they try to hit the page again, like they click the link in their email again, but they've already accepted the training, it's not going to show them the same content. They're going to get sent to this training.html page, which is very nice. So that's just an example of something that we can do that is dynamic content. One of the things that we like when we send out emails to our clients is when they forward it internally. That is fantastic for an attacker because they are doing our job for us. But we don't like it when they forward it to IT staff, because IT staff likes to click the links, tell if they think it looks illegitimate or not, and then block our sites on the firewall. That's no good for us. So what we did is we introduced this feature right here, which can be set in the configuration. It's a little bit fuzzy. What that says is deny requests after credential submission. What that is going to do is after a user has submitted password, username, and password, if we have that combination on file, we will start to reject requests with their ID. Their ID is no longer valid. We're done with them. They cannot hit our site anymore. So we're going to start sending them to a 404 page. So what happens is if I got fooled into viewing this web page, I submitted my credentials and it says they're invalid, I know they're valid, then something's going to look a little bit iffy to me and I might forward this onto my IT staff. But when my IT staff hits that URL, because that has my unique identifier that is no longer valid, that's going to send them to a 404 page. So if I'm on the phone with IT, I'm like, I see this is a login for. IT's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not there, which is pretty nice for us. And what we found is that when we enable that feature specifically for credential harvesting, our campaigns tend to go a little bit longer. They tend to last a little bit longer because it takes IT staff a little bit longer to pick up on what we've done and then to blacklist our websites and domains. This is a nice example, a little bit off topic. We have SMS alerting built right into it. We want to keep tabs on how well our campaign is doing. So right here we can tell that this campaign has reached 50 credentials submitted and 50 visits have been reached for the campaign. So this goes right to our phone so we can tell, get a good idea of what's going on. So that can be configured as well through the preferences. So it'll send a SMS message when like the first visit has been done, 5th visit, so on and so forth. It ramps up from there so it's not hounding your phone, hopefully. But yeah, we like to do that because we want to keep track of if our campaign has been successful at all. Because if we send, a few hundred emails and not one visit has happened within like the first 6 hours, chances are pretty good something's wrong. Usually we have at least one visit within, say, first like 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's usually pretty darn quick that we have at least one visit. So this is a good indication, and this allows us to sort of keep track of how well our campaign is doing without having to log in and like keep track of it. So I promised everyone a demo, so let's take a look. We are going to phish all the users. I wish we could do that. So what I've got here is I have the client. This is the client after we have logged in right here. So I have quite a few fields. So this is all setting up for what we want our email to be. So we have a web server URL up here, which is where we're trying to send our users to. We of course verify that. We want to make sure that the web server URL is working. The company name, that's just a variable that's going to be swapped out into the templates. Like I mentioned before, the company name is in there, so we use that for like different templates to customize it to whatever client we're using. We have our subject, so in this case right here, one of the templates I'm going to use is one of the ones that's actually distributed with Kingfisher, and that subject is going to say HR updates, action required. You need to update your HR information, otherwise you are going to lose out on your benefits, and nobody wants that. Everyone wants health insurance, I hear. So we have a message HTML file, so the email that we're sending out is a HTML file, so we have that loaded up right here. We'll take a look at editing that in a second. Lastly, but probably the most important one, is we have a target CSV file. So these are the people that we're sending our emails to. So this is a simple CSV file, first name, last name, email address. If you don't have the first and last name, that's fine. You can leave those blank. You just have to have that email address. They'll just show up as blank in the templates. So just be aware of that. If you are using templates that expect names, it might say hello, space, comma, and then whatever the verbiage is, it doesn't have the name. So just be aware of that. But right over here, we can take a look at editing our template. So this is our message HTML that we pulled up right here. So we have our variables up in here. So we have client.first name and client.last name. So these are going to get swapped out right up into here. So this is going to say, hello, Spencer McIntyre, if it was being sent to me. As you know, we recently upgraded our benefits packages. So this is our pretext of what we're trying to send. This is a little bit more of a basic one. We have some more advanced ones that we use, and I highly recommend if you're using this internally that you customize this to whatever your target is, to your corporation or whatnot. So we have that right there. Of course, wouldn't be complete if we weren't able to preview it. So when we preview it, we're able to see the HTML as it's been rendered. So we have our first name and last name has been swapped in right here for Alice Little. I'm a huge Wonderland fan, so that's where that came from. We can tell our links are right here, so we're going to go to Kingfisher HR Role. It says Kingfisher because that was the name of the company I used, so we were going to do CleveSec right there, and we come back over here now. It says CleveSec HR Role, so that was our template, so that was where that came from, because nobody, I hope, would enroll for HR benefits for Kingfisher. Probably not the greatest idea, but so we have that preview right there, and then finally, after we look at it and say, you know, that looks good enough, we're going to send this one out, go over here to our Send tab. I would like to send an email live, but unfortunately the Wi-Fi back here does not permit my access to my SMTP server. So fortunately, I sent one a little while ago, which is what we have right here. Below it, it's just saying that, no, seriously, I can't send one from back here. So this is the output of the actual successful one. So I sent one to my Apple, my iCloud email. It's fantastic. One of the other cool features that we just added in semi-recently is SPF Check It. So we can check the SPF domain of the email address that we're spoofing from, and if there is an issue with the SPF record format, it'll actually pop up and say, hey, you can send these emails, but they're probably going to be marked as spam because you're violating the SPF policy of the domain you're sending them from. So that allows us to troubleshoot problems before they occur, because we can say, hey, no, actually, I want to go back and edit it. So we can go back and change our domain. We can mess around with the lettering, maybe make a typo or two in there so it doesn't fail on the SPF check, because that's what a lot of spam filters do as sort of their first line of defense, so we look at those SPF records. So I sent that to myself a little bit earlier, like I mentioned, and so that email is right in here from tess@kingfisher.com. I forgot to swap out the subject before I sent it, so that's where that came from. But this is our email. It should look pretty similar to what we had in our template before. And then so from right here, I can click on my link, and oh no, I've been phished. This is our user awareness page that we provide with our tool. So this is the free one that we provide. We basically want to say, you have in fact been phished, what you did was naughty, and most importantly, here are 3 reasons why you should care. Identity theft, virus and malware installation, oh no's, username and password compromise. You don't want to be that guy and get your username and password compromised, right? Like everyone should aspire to not be that guy. But anyway, so this is our page. Don't become a victim of phishing, and finally you can agree. So before I agree to that, I'm going to pull this on up over here. And so I have this campaign data. So imagine I had sent those out to, say, about 35,000 people. I have this information up in here. And so, of course, it wouldn't be complete if we weren't able to analyze this data. So what we can see right here is we have our number of messages sent, the number of people that visited them, and then unique visits. So unique visits are considered by visits per email that was sent. So the delta between unique visits and visits, those are people that decided to click the same email twice, say once on their phone, once on their computer, things like that. That's not a unique visit because those are not unique visits because they're not 2 separate users. So that's how we track that. We have a nice little pie chart right here. If we had requested credentials, if that had been the target of this campaign, we would have additional information regarding passwords that had been submitted, how many of those were unique combinations of usernames and passwords. We'd have that information up here in the pie chart. It would all look very pretty. I can pull up a example of that in a second. So less pretty things, we have tables of all the information of the messages that we've sent. This will load, takes a couple seconds. Okay, and then so this is my top one right here. That is me. That is the one that I just sent. So we can tell that I have, in fact, opened it. We have that timestamp right there. That is because I did click the link, and so it knows, like, hey, this guy opened this email. So that was already a success, but I haven't trained it, so I have not acknowledged that what I did was wrong. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to hit the I agree. It says thank you. So up in here, it just said trained equals true. There's a couple of special parameters. Like I mentioned, username and password are a couple of them, but if you want to have a custom training form, you just send back, trained equals true or trained equals 1 or whatever, and it tries to figure out what you mean, but it'll then mark it as having been trained. So I'm going to update the information again, and now we can tell I have been trained, so we can keep track of that. So that user knows what they did was wrong. They fell for it, but they won't do it again. So we have that. It's pretty nice. Right over here, we have additional information. So we have visits, so we have email addresses, the IP address that they came from, external IP, which is where we get the geolocation information from, the visit counts, we can tell how many times they visited, and then lastly, we have credentials, so we can pull up and see, what username and password they had submitted when, which is fancy, but there's nothing there because we didn't request those this time. So that is my demo. That's all that I've got for that. Have a couple of other graphs. One of the fun ones that is interesting to look at is we can tell visits over time. We can map that sort of on a timeline. And you see in this case right here, we have a sharp spike on that first day that we sent the emails out. This one is actually much more gradual than we usually see. Usually it's a really heavy spike in that first 24 hours, and after that first 24 hours, you're pretty much done. 99% of the success of a phishing campaign is within that first 24 hours. When I had made the graph, I didn't know that, so I thought it would be really cool to see it over time. The graphs all look the same. It's a sharp spike and then it levels out. But we have that information. So you can export all the information, all those tables that I've shown you before. You can quickly export those out as CSV if you want to do something fancy with them, or you can export everything out all together as a simple XML file, so you can have all the information all in one place. Graphs can be saved, which is pretty cool. Oh, this is actually perfect. This is what I want to show you. So in this campaign, we actually did request credentials. So we see we have 5 columns there at the bottom. That second to the right one is credentials, and then the far right one is unique credentials. So we can tell those combinations. And that tiny little orange sliver up there is a 1.3% of the people that we sent emails to also provided us with credentials. So that's pretty cool. And then on the map, they show up as different colors. I'm pretty excited about the map. That's a pretty new feature. That's actually, that is publicly available right now, but it's in the beta version. So that'll probably be up in the main stable version in like the next month or so. But yes, you can tell not only where the visitors are coming from, but also based on the colors, you can tell which ones also submitted credentials. So we have that information as well. It's pretty nice. All right, so when we are analyzing this information, what types of things is valuable to our clients? One of the things is we like to use the user agents. We, of course, monitor those user agents, everyone that clicked, and we want to look for out-of-date software. That's a big thing. We want to know which users are running XP and which users are running like IE6, real old versions of software. We want to flag on that because it's a pretty big deal. Another thing that we notice sometimes is sometimes our clients will tell them, our employees are only authorized to access their corporate email from their company-issued iPhone and their Windows desktop. So right off the bat, they tell us that if we see any Android phones, any Blackberries, any OS X Apple systems opening the email, we know that those devices are in violation of the company policy. So those are all very useful things to know. And then users forwarding their emails. What we notice about users forwarding their emails is that we can do some basic kind of guessing on based on where the external IP is and what the user agent is, whether or not they either A, opened it with their phone and then with their main computer, or if they forwarded the email to someone else. A lot of times when a user gets a second visit, it's because they opened it once on their phone, the page didn't load or whatever, or they didn't like the results and they want to open it up on their desktop. So we get, you know, a mobile user agent and then a desktop user agent. But if we get 2 desktop user agents from 2 different IPs, for 2 different external IPs, a lot of times we can basically guess on that the users forwarded that email to someone else internally into the organization, which also should be a big no-no because that's increasing the attack surface, and that's what the attackers want. Finally, we can tell weak passwords when users do submit them, so we can run some basic information on that, analyze that information. Thanks everybody. I went a little bit quickly. We are doing a follow-up webinar on some of the more advanced features of what we're doing. We're going to talk a lot more about templating and advanced pretext. If anyone would like to join and register, we're going to do that as a follow-up next Thursday. And so we're going to talk a lot more about campaign analysis and for what we can do after the fact of the campaign with all that information that we have. We're going to talk about phishing pretext, not necessarily in specific to Kingfisher, but talk about, you know, like profiling an organization, doing some open source intelligence, and basically what we should be looking for to build a pretext based off of that. And then finally, we're going to talk a lot more about templating so we can figure out how to make our emails and our web server content so that it's very, very dynamic and so that it fits these pretexts that we built up around them. So, that's that. And that's all I've got. So does anybody have any questions? Yes?
I'm guessing that a lot of your clients that you guys work with are using Outlook. Is there a way to use Kingfisher to send a message as high priority?
Yes, yes there is. I am glad you asked. If you look at this right over here under send messages and configuration, you can not only set the sensitivity or the importance. So yeah, if you want to be high priority, just set that right there. And it will show up with a little red asterisk that says you really ought to take a look at this. Yes, you can do that. Yes.
2 questions. So first, is that QR code a phishing attempt?
No, it is not. I was hoping somebody would ask. You know, I was like, I can put up the super long URL, but like, it is right there. Hopefully you have an app that shows you the URL before you go to it. Something I would actually like to do as a new feature into Kingfisher is have it generate QR codes for us. That was actually something I've been thinking about, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. But no, this one is legitimate.
So my second question was, it's from what I gathered here, it seems that when you install Kingfisher, it does have some kind of built-in sending mail server, so you can like maybe a send mail or you have to lose it right now. But
It does not have an SMTP server. It needs an open relay, but we have the integrated ability right into it that you can set up an SSH port forward inside the client. You can say like, hey,
you still must supply your own send mail type server.
exactly, and because it's an open relay, no one wants to make that public available to the internet, so if you have your open relay bound to just the local host, that's why you can SSH forward right into it.
Yeah,
and you can use that. Yeah, it uses SSH a lot to set up like the communications to the server and everything like that, so that's how that works. Yes?
Can you use this to gauge like defense, more like blue team? So how quickly is this campaign protected? How quickly does it take to get it, the email deleted from the user's mailbox? How quickly does it take to get proxy lock in place?
From our perspective, strictly speaking, because we don't have a whole lot of communication with our client, we do not know when it is detected. We have to infer that based on the drop in new visits. If the client wanted to tell us, then I suppose we would have our answer and we'd be able to tell, you know, like these users based on the timestamp clicked it after the organization had determined that this was a malicious phishing attack. That'd probably be something we want to take a look at. But yeah, for the most part, we don't really have access to the information as far as when exactly they detected, so it's something we have to infer. Yes?
What's your favorite pretext?
Favorite pretext? The antivirus one's pretty cool. Yeah, that one works a lot because it's really flexible, and everybody likes antivirus, and it's pretty legitimate because a lot of companies use it, so that works out well a lot. We'll say pretty much like any portal, like, hey, this is version 2.0, please log in to help us test it. That works pretty well for the most part. Yes?
Do you have any idea what your typical hit rate is?
What our typical what?
Hit rate is good.
Hit rate? That's kind of difficult to say. We have like all that information, but I haven't like actually crunched the numbers across campaigns. The other thing is that the campaigns are all organized separately, but what we have a lot of times is our clients want us to do a first round, and then about a month after we do the first round, they want to do a second round targeting the people that failed the first time. So going through all that information, like filtering that out, something I haven't quite done yet, but as far as from an attacker's perspective, the fact that we just need like 1 or 2 people to click the email, it's pretty high. We always have at least a couple of people that are gonna click the email. But this one we had a success rate of 12.8 plus 1.3 is 13.2, 14.2%. Somebody opened the email. Pretty good. Anybody else have any questions? Cool. Well, thanks for everybody for the interest and for listening to me talk about it.
As you guys know that have been here before, we have our little tradition. We give out this little gift to all our speakers here. It's a message in a bottle from our own InfoSec Sage. You go to twitter.com/InfoSecSage and you can get some of his wisdom, but not this one. This is for speakers only.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
But you don't need a drink right now. I don't want to kill the vibe here.